Welcome, everybody. This is Table Crashers episode 38. We are here with Robert McConnell of Lazy Squire Games, and we're going to be looking at his game Wild Assent. ASSENT, not ASCENT, right, Robert?
That is correct.
By the way, welcome to the stream. How's
Thank you.
Going?
Good.
I guess we'll start right there. The difference between assent and ascent. Please let us know.
So you want like the dictionary definitions, or
whatever you think will tickle the viewer's funny bone, or whatever.
So
their
let me just say
bone.
it's not a spelling mistake. I do know the definition of both words. ASCENT is to climb or ascend.
Yep.
ASSENT is reaching an agreement. It's sort of a story context for the game. There are these individuals known as ascents. They can create or reach a accord with the creatures of the wilds and command them in battle. So it's ascents, wild ascent.
So like basically druids would have like an affinity with like or like the ability to ascend, in the animal world, right?
So yeah, it's similar to that. Basically, they're kind of like you don't actually like train to be an ascent. You're born as one.
Okay.
So and people don't know that they're ascents because the wilds is a sort of confined area. It's huge, but people aren't traveling there because it's very dangerous. It's full of monsters, and so you have people who are rounded up, and then they're tested to see if they're ascents, and then if they are, they're forced to fight in the arenas of the Sylvestrum.
That's pretty awesome. Now you say tested. Is it? See now we were gonna go into like game mechanics and stuff, but now you got me. Like you got me with the lore already. When you say tested, is it like what time period does this game take place in? Like in if you were to because maybe does it happen within the Earth, or is this a different type of realm altogether?
This is a different planet. It's a planet called Ralavar. There's two main continents. One that really isn't covered in the game. It's the home of the Levat. We'll see one of them, Zack Sosa. They're sort of red or gray-skinned individuals with pulsing veins that look like fire. But the main continent that the story does take place on, about half to 3/4 of it is the wilds. It's this untamed wilderness. It's the birthplace of the gods. It's flowing with magical energy. So basically, Veracly has taken over the kingdom, and all she's interested in is fights at her arena, the Sylvestrum. And so she's hires these individuals called seekers, and she sends them into the wilds to hunt for dangerous creatures and sometimes ascents if they can find them, and bring them back to the arena so that they can be forced to fight.
That's so. I mean, I didn't know any of this going into tonight's conversation, and that lore even. So full disclosure, I backed this early on when you launched it. Actually,
I appreciate
before you
that.
launched it, I caught you on the Facebook page, and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Super into a lot of it, the game mechanics alone, and then the story. Now that you just fed me, I'm like, okay, I'm even more bought in. Now that's just me personally. This is not the. But that's awesome. And one thing I do appreciate is that the level that you are invested as the creator of this in that storyline, you don't have to like reach for any of the information you're giving me tonight. Like it's ingrained in your knowledge of this world that you've created, which is awesome, and I appreciate that.
You won't have the same appreciation when I try and remember the rules as I remember which version of the rules we're currently at, or the fact that we have two completely different game modes that sometimes clash when it comes to rules. So expect me to be looking over here every so often just to make sure I have the numbers correct.
That is fine.
The story, a lot of it started with the story. We had an idea of a type of game we wanted to make, and then I just kind of, as soon as that happens, I just start thinking of story. Why are these characters there? Why are we having this game at all? And then everything kind of feeds from the story.
That makes sense. So, before we dive even further into the lore and other things here, but could you please tell me about Lazy Squire Games? Now, when I first saw the information, I picked it up through Facebook, and then I started like on this like crazy hunt to find out more about you and like what you do, and it just sort of went full circle back to the Facebook page most of the time. Tell me about what you do, and then what started Lazy Squire Games and all that fun stuff.
I've played board games for quite a while, video games even longer, and I just
Mhm.
had a strong desire to make my own games. Kind of started Lazy Squire Games started last year. I think it was about a year ago, October or September actually.
Okay.
We started off. It's basically a company of one. It's me and a bunch of contractors.
Right.
Um, the and so I like to use the word we, but sometimes that's a little not accurate.
Right.
Sometimes it's just me. But I mean, when you see the game, you're going to see the art and realize that I draw stick figures. If it's words, I probably had something to do with it. If it's pictures or sculpts or anything else, I might have said, oh yeah, why don't we do this, and then they just ran with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that
Like
particular.
make it look cool.
Yes, make it look cool, run with it. But yeah, we started off. We helped with some Kickstarter campaigns for Ninja Division and Shinobi 7. It was the
Okay.
Starfinder Masterclass Miniatures campaign and the Sonic the Hedgehog Battle Racers campaign.
Okay.
So if you look at those pages and you see like the graphic design, um, that was the kind of thing that we did initially.
Okay.
We had already started working on our own games. Wild Assent was started around that time, even though we hadn't announced anything. Our initial plan was to start with Partition, which was a very ambitious game. It was 3 games in one.
Okay.
Where basically, I don't know how well versed in esports you are, but the idea was that it was an esports management game,
That's pretty
and
cool.
it had an overall game, and then you had 3 mini games. One was based off of a collectible card game like Hearthstone. One was based off of a MOBA, and one was based off an FPS. And I designed all
Perfect.
3, and I contend that they were awesome. But the problem was that it was a bit. Our goal was to release Partition, get our name out there, and then really push hard on our first miniatures game.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, designing 3 games plus the overall game ate up a lot of time, and so we didn't have the amount of marketing that we needed.
Right.
I think we marketed that for about a month, so it just was not meant to be. So Partition
Right.
failed. We learned a lot. There was some hubris in there. There was certainly some lessons to be learned. We asked the board game community on Facebook to tell us what they thought we did wrong, and
Nice.
added that to our own we know what we did wrong list.
Hmm.
And then we decided, all right, well, we're going to go full on Wild Ascent. And really, it's just been trying to make sure that people knew what we were talking about, or
Hmm.
like knew what our campaign was, knew what the game was. They were excited. We were showing a lot of miniatures. Miniatures, definitely, at least one's nice as ours, if I do say so myself. They help
Very true. Yeah.
sell a game. People always say, "Well, it's about gameplay," but you can't advertise gameplay. No one clicks on a link that isn't pretty. Um, so we really
Right.
we pushed hard on the aesthetics of the game, and now with these kinds of streams, etc., we're trying to push like, well, hey, there's a really good game underneath all that pretty.
So when you were personally designing the game, did you pull from um, aspects of your career or personal experiences?
So basically, I'm a big skirmish game fan.
Okay.
The wildest We're going to see the hunt mode today, which is the sort of survival campaign mode. But
Got it.
Wild Ascent started off originally as just a skirmish game. I think the first real skirmish game I played was HeroClix, and then I moved to
Oh yeah.
HeroScape, and then I just branched out into all sorts of other random skirmish games. But I mean, the Wild Ascent Arena mode is a bread and butter skirmish game with a few nice twists and sort of a customization that you don't always get to see in those games.
Okay.
The Ascents they have their own 5 skills that you pick 2 from, and so they have 2 equipment slots with lots of options. So it lets you rather than just having how you the number of characters you pick or the types of characters you pick
Hmm.
determine how you customize. You also have that extra layer that I think is a lot of fun.
Right.
But so
Within the characters themselves,
yeah,
there's choices to make
yeah,
and trees to build off of, and that's awesome. That's
that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
So it started off with a skirmish game, but Partition made us really think about what people wanted more than just what we wanted to play,
Hmm.
and I was concerned that a skirmish game by itself was not going to make it on Kickstarter. That we looked at things like Arena the Contest. They had a campaign like I didn't back it, but it was looked like a role playing campaign kind of thing.
Right.
And so we were thinking, how can we what can we do to make Wild Assent the same kind of thing? And so it's funny. I like to laugh about it because Hearthstone was what came up.
Okay.
Right around the time I mentioned Arena the Contest, but that was later. But it was around I think November or December. Of last year, Hearthstone had a new feature called Dungeon Runs. Basically, you do a one fight, and then you get to pick from one of 3 cards, I think, and then so you kind of increased your deck, and then went into the next fight. And so we started off with the that's what the hunt mode originally sort of was. You would go on a hunt, and then you would increase your characters, and then you would go on another hunt. And it kind of evolved from that as we realized that, hey, this could be something much more and a lot more interesting. And that's when we added the encampment, and now you can build and upgrade buildings. You hire workers. There's a lot more involved in that sort of just rather than just picking a card. Now you have a whole slew of things that you can do to make your characters and your overall campaign better.
Right. Now, if I were to use the phrase KDM light, is that an accurate representation of the hunt mode in this game, or would you say it's like would you be insulted by that term? I guess
I would not be insulted. I mean, being compared to such a wildly successful game would be is a boon to us by any means. It's not completely true, but it's not inaccurate either. And it was on my mind as we were making this, because as soon as we added the encampment, I said, "Oh crap! I don't want to just make a Kingdom Death monster clone." I mean, Kingdom Death doesn't have the skirmish mode, and like I said, that's a completely it's a full game by itself. But I didn't want us to fall into the trap of just like, well, Kingdom Death does this, we could do that too. And so we were kind of as we looked at this, we were trying to make sure that, or at least I was, that we didn't repeat that, make that mistake. So yeah, it's certainly, if you want to distill it down, the hunt mode you can certainly call it a Kingdom Death Monster Light. Kingdom Death has a lot more depth. It's a more expensive game. It doesn't have the extra mode that we have, but ours is. But yeah, it's not inaccurate.
Right. And I think and the reason I blanket that statement when I say like the light like that, because budget, a little bit more budget friendly, because when I looked at Kingdom Death Monster when that came out, and I shied away from it. The cost was just out of control for me. And then when this came up, there's still really beautiful miniatures in your game. The gameplay is there's aspects that are reminiscent of KDM, but the grind doesn't. I mean, it seems to be within the game. And again, I haven't played it yet, but from my perceptions of what I've read and I've seen, the grind doesn't seem to be as I'm not gonna say challenging, because that's not true, but maybe it is brutal and as insane and as time consuming as what I'd be experiencing in like a Kingdom Death monster campaign.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have Kingdom Death, and it's it is brutal. Wild Ascent, the hunt mode is hard, but it's still fair. Kingdom Death has a lot of mechanics that are designed to not be fair, and that's part of the fun. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, well, that's just bad, because it works for Kingdom Death, but you miss a lot in Kingdom Death, at least early on. With our game, we've added a concept of base damage. We had it in Partition. Basically, the idea is that whenever you attack, you are going to be doing some damage, assuming you get past their armor. But the dice roll complements the attack versus being the main thrust of it. There's no rolling to see if you hit or not. It's just how much damage did you do, and is that enough to exceed your target's armor?
Got it. Okay, beautiful. So you're not like doing saves and also other crazy things you run across other skirmish.
I mean, there's each character, whether it's the arena mode or the skirmish or the hunt mode, has abilities. You said that. I was looking straight at Fani, who's one of the characters. She has a dodge ability, I believe. So there are things that you can do that are dice rolls like that, but it's for straight up attacking. There's you hit, and it's just, did you do damage? Did you do enough damage? And the answer is usually yes, but.
Perfect. Now, this is going to be an interesting question, because I'm actually currently working on a game that is a blend of a war game and a board game. And it's a very fine line to walk, because And like, I guess my question is, how do you balance? How do you bring those two worlds together effectively, in your opinion?
You mean for
So like skirmish games, so like when I talk about a war game, I talk like War Machine or Warhammer, or even like the Hero Clicks, I guess would be part of it. But how do you take a super advanced and in-depth rule set that you see in a tabletop war game, hex-based war game, and distill it down to be enjoyable enough for both the board game community and still appeal to the war game / skirmish community?
I mean, sometimes you can't. You're not
Okay.
necessarily going to please everyone. I mean, I
Mhm.
myself, when I see a tape measure, I'm like, do I want to play that game?
Right.
Because I'm lazy, hence lazy
Right.
Squire games. But yeah, I mean, my my advice to you would be don't try to appeal to everyone,
Right.
because that can be dangerous. And it
Mhm.
might end up appealing to no one. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not the best expert on combining things because I basically made two separate games and jammed them into the same box. That's not really what you're looking for. But
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's don't try to please everyone. Make the game you want to make, and then
Yeah.
see how it plays.
Then distill
Uh,
it down afterward, right?
yeah, I mean, you can start heavy with the rules and then just pare down, make things simple.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised how easy it is to cut stuff once you realize it's bogging your game down.
Very true. Very true. So you're 7 days left on the campaign, so
Yes.
officially the halfway point. You guys went with a shorter campaign.
hmm
What is your current mindset now, that you're halfway through?
Well, thank God we got funded. Everyone just assumes like, oh yeah, we knew we were going to get funded. No, I mean you can't assume that, especially since partition. We did assume we're like, oh, we'll get funded. It's just a matter of how much we get funded by.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so yeah, I mean it's this one we were as cautious as possible. Yeah, I mean we've hit that lull. Every campaign hits it where basically, I mean, especially since we had an early bird, you're going to have folks tapping out. They just hopped in to see if that's what they really wanted, and then
Mhm.
now they're gone. We're going to be working with a marketing company. Contract's not signed, so I will not say who. But
Mhm.
we should be seeing an increase in pledges here, and it's basically I, we're just riding it out till we hit that last 2 to 3 days because that's where the real magic happens now that the beginning of the campaign's over. But in the
Of
meantime,
course.
we're not going to be just resting on our laurels. We have a lot of
Right.
fun things planned. I'm hoping to have some of the scenario book ready to show. We're going to have a
Ooh,
story-based campaign in there for the hunt mode and
beautiful.
some some fun and interesting twists on both game modes to make them more interesting or more accessible. Um, so yeah, I mean we're in it for the long haul, and thankfully the long haul is only 7 days.
That's right. So now, and that you mentioned that you ran a shorter campaign than I'm personally used to. I've been backing a lot of things over the last 2 years, but definitely a shorter campaign than I'm used to. Could
Sure.
you elaborate on why you chose that time frame?
The lull. I don't know if you've
Okay.
noticed, but
Yeah. Yeah.
basically campaigns have two really strong showings at the beginning and the end. The beginning,
Very true.
if you did a good pre-campaign, lots of marketing, advertising, getting your name out there, you'll have a strong beginning, and then basically there are folks who actually don't back your campaign; they'll follow it, and what happens is you start accumulating all these followers. Right now, we're at I think it's about 1,000 people have backed, but of these followers, but we have 5,400 followers.
Okay.
Kickstarter emails all of them when the 48 hours are left, and that's why you
Very true.
see a huge jump at the end. And so in between that, especially for a smaller company, it can be hard to keep that momentum going throughout the whole campaign. I mean,
Yes.
we had a very good, strong showing, especially for almost a no-name company. But at a certain point there's only so much you can do, and we chose not to have a bunch of add-ons, et cetera, which can keep those numbers going up,
Gotcha.
at least temporarily. And so it really doesn't make sense to do a 30-day campaign. There's no benefit. The lull is longer. It gives people longer time to back out because they're bored or they find something else.
Hmm.
And so, honestly, we might look at a 7-day campaign next time. It
Wow.
people, people get their ideas, or they get an idea in their head that whatever everyone has done, that's the standard, and anything else is just strange.
Of
I
course, right.
think Cool Mini or Not did I think it was a 5-day campaign for Arcadia Quest Riders. That's
Oh, okay.
short,
Yeah,
but
that's very short.
and I'm sure they were just testing something out.
Hmm.
But yeah, Awaken Realms, I think, is going to do a 14-day campaign for their Edge
Right.
recampaign. I think 14 days is going to start being, if not the standard, at least something that people are now used to.
Well,
Uh,
and now that you mention it, your reasoning behind it actually makes a lot of sense, because there are a lot of campaigns that I've backed in the past that I've jumped from because something else came up that was more appealing within that 30-day period. And then I was like, well, okay, this one cost me, let's say, for example, this one's like an $80 game. Well, this one's also an $80 game. Can I justify buying both of them, or do I choose one? And
yeah.
then most often times I'm choosing one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you get the companies with a lot more money than us, and they have millions of add-ons, and it's like, well, I can either get both games, or or and put a second mortgage on my house, or I'll just get the one that has all the really cool stuff.
Right. The one for less money that's actually a complete game, instead of like the one that's a partial game that I have to spend the mortgage on
Yeah,
to get the full game. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? That is very sound and sound logic there. And I think you're right. I think you will see a shift in that paradigm of like the 30-day campaigns based on what you're saying there. So, what was your biggest obstacle that you had to overcome related to the planning, design, and Kickstarter of this game?
So you mean just the campaign, or
I mean,
the whole
we
thing?
can go through, if you want to go through the three stages, we can. So, like, let's start with the planning. What was your biggest obstacle that you had to overcome during planning?
I mean, some of it was just morale after a failed campaign.
Hmm.
Some of it was just making sure that we had something that people legitimately wanted to buy and would get
Hmm.
excited about, and that's kind of what led into the hunt mode being created.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and some of it's just money. We don't have people kind of have turned Kickstarter into this sort of pre-order system, and if you don't have a
Right.
completely finished product, then it's something's either wrong or it's not worth. It gets ignored.
Right.
Kickstarter, you're not actually pre-ordering an item. You're not a customer. You're an investor, and
That's
so
correct.
you're placing a lot of pressure on new companies to basically put money forward and then try and get investors, which is usually not necessarily what you would want to do. It'd be nice to get
Right.
investors first. So yeah, money was definitely an issue. 3D sculptors are not cheap,
Right.
and if you want to get anywhere, you need to spend some money on advertising beforehand.
Very true.
So yeah, and there's only so much money my wife will accept before she wants to divorce me.
How was your experimentation in marketing and investment? Like, because obviously this is probably one of your first times really pushing marketing on a product, unless you've done it for a living, and I don't know that. But
No.
um, but how was your experimenting with that? Did you have failures within that? Did you have some really big victories? I mean, obviously there's definitely some victories because you funded so like pretty quickly within your campaign. But
Yeah.
elaborate on that for us if you don't mind.
I mean, we got to see what it was a test case with Partition. We did some paid advertising. We actually got quite a bit of traffic to the site, but not a
Hmm.
lot of backers. And
Okay.
so we kind of Facebook lets you do split tests where you can test like an audience or
Very true.
against another audience. And so we did a lot of testing early on to see which markets would be best for us. We
Mhm.
actually advertised to some Pokemon or anyone who'd said they liked Pokemon, since the arena mode it's basically bloody Pokemon.
Okay.
We got a lot of interest from that, which was interesting. The only issue is that we don't know if that necessarily translated into backers.
Correct.
But it's all about getting your name out there,
It
and
is.
like I said, having the miniatures that the sculpts, and then turning those sculpts into actual miniatures really helped a lot with the marketing. I mean, it sounds corny to say, well, if you want to have good marketing, just have a really great product, but
Right.
but it's true. I mean, it's you need to have something that catches a person's eye immediately, and they want to know
Yes.
more. We had those 3D videos that we with animations and things that we used to advertise. Those worked out really well.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's really just think about what you would click on, and then try and make that.
Right. So marketing, clickbait the movie. It's pretty much what
Basically, yeah. But see, and that's the thing, though. You don't want clickbait, because if you do clickbait,
No,
then
right.
you know, they click and they're like, "Oh, I don't care about this," and then they're gone. So you have to, it's like click,
You
I
have
don't
to
know,
have
click
legitimate
good.
value prop. Like
Yes.
there has to be value behind that click. Like, so for example, I can put really flashy pictures, but then if they come to the site and like on the site they're like, wait a second, these are obviously just like photoshopped images, and there's not, I don't see any evidence of a real product behind this. Then you've lost those people. You've lost confidence in that
Yeah,
customer, potential
and
customer.
we were actually getting a little bit of that. People started noticing that our renders looked almost like miniatures. They were that
Okay.
nice, and so
Right.
we actually I started seeing some you know, rumblings. They were like, "Oh, these are just renders," and thankfully by that point we actually had miniatures. I was like, "Oh well, why don't you look at this?"
Yeah, you're like
So
holding up. You're like, oh, really?
yes, yeah. Well, what do you think of that? But yeah, marketing is only going to help you if you have something that people want to look at. You can spend a
Okay,
ton of money on marketing and it not get a great value if it's not something that people want to see.
makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so what is your favorite board game mechanic?
Hmm. I want to say just dice, because dice get such a bad rap, but
They really do. You know what?
just
They really do.
yeah, you know, there's just something visceral about like chucking something at the table. You can do it gently if you're relaxed. You can just throw it as hard as you want. It doesn't matter if they go
Yeah.
flying off the table. It doesn't matter. So I almost want to just pick dice. But honestly, for me, it's progression. I know
Okay.
that's kind of generic, but it
That's
doesn't
good.
matter what I'm playing, whether it's board games or video games or whatever. Any kind of progression, I'm like, oh, I can gain levels, or I can get more stuff.
Right.
You know, any game I make is going to have some sort of progression in it, because I want it.
Yeah.
You know, it clicks something off in my brain, and I need it.
That's that little, you're a progression addict is what you're saying
Yes,
right now.
hit points
Chemically
and
in your
mana.
brain, there's triggers that are just like, oh wait, so whatever I start with grows. It's like, all
Yes.
right, I'm in. So the next one's a fun question for you, and you know, this one's always fun for people I have on the show. But what is your guilty pleasure game?
Guilty
And,
pleasure game.
yeah, and usually people ask like what I mean by that. Basically, it's the game that you play that in a way you're ashamed of enjoying it, especially now that you're a designer. You have this clout around you that's beyond, you know.
God. Oh
You
yes,
know what I mean.
I am full of clout. Um, honestly, if I had to say, I would probably say the GI Joe trading card game.
Whoa,
No
that
one has
was
ever answered that, have they?
no, that's great. So
That's right.
why is it your guilty pleasure? Was it just like, was it one of those games that just really had nothing fun for you, like, and or you had it
Uh,
with your friends, the experience of
no,
it?
I mean, so when I was a kid, I was a military brat, and so
Okay.
you know, I kind of had, you know, I looked up to my dad, and I don't know if that's why I got into GI Joe, but I did, and it was the only comics I read. Like I didn't read Spider-Man, X-Men, nothing. It was always GI Joe,
That's awesome.
and you know, there wasn't. I collected the figures, but when I got into, I guess it was. I don't know if it was when I was in college or high school or when, but when they announced that they were having a GI Joe trading card game, I was all in. And the game itself is not bad.
Right.
It's actually the game is fine. That's what it is, and that's why it's my
Okay.
guilty pleasure. Because you know,
Yeah.
I have plenty more advanced games and more interesting games, but it's just fun. You know, you have the first half, you just have a one-on-one fight, and it's I think you're just comparing numbers, and then the second half you're like combining the whole team on either side and just adding up numbers.
Nice.
So it's like, you know, GI Joe math the game, but
GI
it
Joe math.
yeah, GI Joe math.
Awesome.
So I wish they had made more expansions. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that I'd have to say that's my guilty pleasure. I mean,
That,
my first game in the industry was I think Xena Warrior Princess, the CCG. So I was excited about Hercules. It was coming out after, and so I just bought
yeah.
all the Xena ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I had humble beginnings.
So yeah, you really pushed this collectible card game like
Yeah, I mean, they really were I started. Although I think I had some weird Citadel card game when I was a kid, like when I don't know, like 10 or so.
yeah.
That one was also comparing numbers, so there's a running
Okay.
theme here.
There is
Yeah,
progression and number crunching.
that's right. I do like
Those
numbers.
if you want to sell Robert McConnell a game, then just put progressing numbers in that
Yes.
game.
That's how you sell everyone a game. As long as they
That's
see
true.
that backer count and the
That's
pledge
true.
total go up, they're all in.
Uh, so, uh, what factor of your planning do you think led to your project hitting its funding level so early?
Uh, it was our pre-campaign. I mean, obviously, the having the art and the miniatures, etc. Already, all those things help. It's not
Right.
necessarily one thing, but really the marketing push that we had and the engagement with the community definitely helped
A-
a
a-
lot.
And did you do that completely online? There was no like traveling, shaking hands,
See,
it was
I have a day job, and my boss was like, "You should go to like the game stores and just shake hands and like show them the
right,
game." And the problem
right.
is, I could have done that, but you reach
Hmm.
so many more people online.
You do.
Um, there's I've heard that going to conventions period isn't worth the expense. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's true, but uh, yeah, the amount number of people you can reach online is just so
Yeah.
much greater than just driving down to your local game store. Nothing
Well,
against local game stores,
right,
but
and I think so. I think that there's a lot of designers that move from the hobby into a bit of a business side of it, just for the purpose. There's a lot of designers that exist only to cover their cost for convention tickets or the ability to attend, because they'll just put out a game a year just so that they can get that I'm a designer badge, and most of those games like I know designers that are actually really well established that do that. Like if I can make a game a year that covers my conventions for the year, then that's my goal. And obviously that's not your driving point, and I think that's awesome because a lot of the old school look at it is boots on the ground, hit up every convention you can, make a little hype team, and that will lead to your sales. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's obviously, I mean, you seem to have taken the right path and right route here.
Yeah. I've been to no conventions, so it would be very
Really?
easy to pay for my convention bills.
Mhm, mhm.
I did it before I started, but yeah, the online is definitely a strong way to go. I'm
Mhm,
not discounting conventions. I have a
mhm.
full time job aside from this, so I couldn't really set aside the time, and I was working on the game, so
Of course.
there's a lot of words in the game and the lore. So and a lot of Facebook posts, etc. And I have a family too, so I mean, which I've been ignoring way too much.
Right, right. No,
So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's only so much time in the day, and for the bigger companies, yeah, I can definitely see where they would make an impact
of
at the
course.
conventions, and they have the the budget to do so.
Right.
I hope to be there someday.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
but
right, of course,
yeah,
yeah.
but for now, Facebook can do a lot. I and it's funny because I don't really use Facebook personally.
Right.
I think I joined to I think it was to play a game. It was some Dungeons and Dragons game or something, and then I made a few accounts to play like a Marvel game, and then baby pictures when my daughter was born, and
And
then
that's it.
yeah, well, yeah, and that's it. I mean, it's all I used it for, and so like, oh, and now I need to interact people on this thing I've barely used,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's been a bit of a learning curve on Facebook for sure, but it's
Yeah.
a very strong way to advertise. There's a reason that the companies that are marketing for Kickstarter campaigns are using Facebook to advertise.
Right. And the funny thing is like as like a streamer, a media streamer, it's kind of like Twitter is kind of our go-to. Instagram is one of the bigger ones. Facebook, not so much, but I'm seeing like it's a little in the mix because since we work with board games, like Facebook is a pretty good contact point for board games, it seems at this point. Like
Yeah,
it seems there's a very strong Facebook community utilizing Facebook to like an overall board game community utilizing it, but definitely that's where you want if you want to grab hits and likes and views. That's if you're dealing with board games, that seems to be the place to be.
yeah, there's definitely a strong board game community presence on
Right.
on Facebook, and you have to be careful because sometimes it's too strong. There's some groups where they have so many people, it may look enticing, and then you realize that your post is going to disappear within a few minutes.
Exactly.
And so sometimes the more the mid-range and even smaller communities, you can get more traction and more views for your posts.
So I this kind of slipped my mind because you hooked me with the lore early on, but for anybody watching, anybody out there in the crowd right now, we are giving away a copy, and I shouldn't say that. We're giving away a pledge level this entire week. So starting with this stream tonight, then my stream on Happy Fun Time Live, that'll be Wednesday, where we'll be doing gameplay, and then Thursday when Geek Spiel is playing. We're going to be giving away chances basically to win a pledge level. And the pledge level is what, Robert? The Champions Pledge, is that correct?
It's the Champion Pledge. It's the core game plus the Shadow of the Sylvestrum expansion. It's almost everything that we're offering.
Okay, so yeah, so it's value of that pledge is $199. But if you guys head up to the page now, if you didn't do that, I'm sorry I didn't plug that earlier. Head over to Kickstarter now. Wild Assent, Assent, is the name of the game. Go ahead and take a look at that page. But yes, we are this week going to be giving away that pledge level. And what that means is that you could be anywhere in the world that they will ship to receive this prize at the end of the week. And then Matt's in my ear as my producer here. What do they have to do to enter that? Is there anything special they have to do tonight? Okay, so exclamation. Okay, because you probably have been typing it. I don't have chat up, and I apologize about that. So I'm sorry I dropped the ball on that, but please type in exclamation point raffle if you would like a chance of winning that pledge level. And then the cool thing is you guys can do with I shouldn't say whatever you want. When you get that pledge level, if there's more things that are added and you want to get them or add-ons, you guys can just add to that pledge, and then you'll receive at the same time as the rest of the backers. Go ahead. Oh, and yeah, you will have to pay shipping on that pledge, and you could check the shipping cost on the bottom of the page, but it is negligible compared to the cost of the game. Yes, and you can enter all 3 nights that we are streaming. Again, tonight, Wednesday, and then Thursday. All right. So, Robert, I've pretty much run out of questions at this point for you, but it's been this has been awesome. You ready to crash the table?
Absolutely.
All right. Phenomenal. Chris Cornell is here. What? Who invited him? Oh, sorry. Hey. So, Chris, how's it going, man? Oh, and you're also muted, so double high five on that one.
All right, is that better?
Yes, it's better.
I don't know why. Normally, when I pull my microphone down, it mutes and everything. So I was just going on a rant, and here no one heard me. So
Exactly.
that's probably for the best.
Yeah. So what's going on? How's it going, man?
Oh, not too bad. I'm just sitting here looking at this beautiful board, all these cards and stuff on the table. It looks really nice.
I'm sitting here looking at your beautiful PAX Unplugged shirt, and I
Yes.
can't wait. I cannot wait.
Not only is this an Unplugged shirt, but it's an Enforcer shirt. I was an Enforcer last year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I would have avoided you. That's probably why I didn't see it.
You probably did.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because I was a troublemaker. No, I'm kidding. I'm a good boy. Anyway, so Robert is going to go ahead and walk us through the hunt mode of the game, and this is the cooperative version of the game that you could play from 1 player to how many? 4?
4. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to follow that red hand around while he does things on the board, and I will try to zoom in as best I can. You can sort of see my screen too, I believe, Robert, so you can slap that blue hand and say, look over here. But he's going to walk us through how to play the hunt mode, and then we're going to do 1 or 2 rounds to show you guys that gameplay. So go ahead, Robert, take it away.
All right. So I have Tabletopia open up on my screen. So if I'm missing, hand gestures on your end, just let me know.
Yep.
Okay, so let's just go over very briefly the overall theme of the game. So basically, as I was talking about in the lore, Veraclea has decided she needs more gladiators for her gladiatorial arenas in the Sylvestrum. So she sends these seekers, and we're going to play as 4 seekers. You always play as 4. So if you're playing solo, you'll play all 4. We've added new seekers with the stretch goals and the expansion, so it doesn't have to be these 4, but these are the 4 from the core game. They each fill their own special role. We have Zack Sosa here. He's basically the tank. Berline's the support, and then Ilithina and Fani are both the damage dealers. Ilithina's long range, Fani's sort of mid range with a few survivability tools at her disposal.
Wow, I little side comment. The Fani art is really cool. Like that the feline race and stuff. That's actually.
Yep, that's the Ashkari. The since I know you like lore, the Ashkari are a animal-like, or I should say beast-like people that live in the wilds. They have a higher instance of ascents, and they're actually always hunted by seekers. Fani is currently the only Ashkari seeker, and her story kind of is unique. But anyway, so but I will cut myself off there.
Sorry.
Go to wildassent.com and read the story for fun.
Yes.
But anyway, so if you had more than one player, you'd have to decide who's going to play what seekers. The more experienced player should play more of them if you don't have the full 4 players. If you want to hit spacebar on, let's say, Zack Sosa's card,
sure.
I'll just go over the way the stats work. So the blue on the top left is the speed of the character. That's how many spaces they can move on the board.
Perfect.
The 30 there, that's his health. The 2 gray numbers on either side in the middle there, the one on the left, the 2, that's his physical defense. The one on the right is his magical defense. And then the numbers in the middle in order are range, base damage, and attack dice. So when Zack Sosa attacks, he has only a range of 1, so he has to hit adjacent targets. He always does 3 damage, and then you roll 3 attack dice, which may add extra damage, or they may interact with some of his skills, such as Maim, his first skill there. It has a star there, which means that it is a special skill, and the dice has that same star. If you roll 1 star with dice,
one moment. Where are the dice here? I can zoom
the red dice down here. So you can see this one has a star. So if you roll, when you roll his attack dice, if you roll 1 of those stars, at least 1, it does 1 damage, but then it also will create this special effect fatigue, which is a debuff. And then he also has another ability, teamwork, which basically makes him super strong. He will make a 4 dice attack against any enemy that is any adjacent enemy that's attacked. So positioning Zack Sosa is very important because I don't know if we mentioned this before. The game is hard. It's designed to be.
Right.
We've already had one video review place lose in the first fight, which was hilarious. They did not respect the wilds, and the wilds killed them. But so the game has permadeath in that if all 4 seekers fall in battle, the game is over. It doesn't matter where you are in the campaign. We're going to have a scenario in the scenario book where it kind of lessens that blow. But even if we had it so that you got to go back to the encampment, you're already behind, and it actually would be a much greater uphill battle if we had left it. So we just decided, you know what? If everyone dies, everyone dies. That's now Zack Sosa's other half of his card there, he's got 5 skills, and you notice that they have symbols on the right. Those are actually the buildings in the encampment, and when you buy and upgrade those buildings, you unlock his skills. And so that's going to segue nicely into the encampment. So
here we go. There we go.
Everything is better with sound effects.
That's right.
So once you've picked your seekers, everyone's decided who they're going to play. The first thing you do is you set up your encampment. You can see that we have this little Roman numeral 1 token on this building. This is the barracks. You always start with the barracks and 2 other buildings. And so we're going to be able to take these 2 here and put them wherever we want. I'll tell you right now, you'd be foolish not to pick the temple.
It looks nice.
Yeah, it does. It's very pretty, and that's important on the hunt.
Swirling around it.
Yes. So the barracks, when you return from it first, the first thing it does is it actually heals every seeker when they return from the hunt, which is very good because you will take a lot of damage. It also has one creature slot when you. The goal here is to capture creatures so you can sell them at the Sylvestrum. So this is your first and only creature slot until you purchase the creature pens. So that's very important. And it also determines how many workers you can have in your encampment. It starts with 2. It's these first 2 slots. These symbols are also pretty, but they mean absolutely nothing.
Okay.
It just it looked better than just having them blank. So don't be fooled. They are in fact just pretty.
And the funny thing is, like, the first thing I assumed too is like, okay, well, so I put like my blacksmith here, and I put my scholar here, and apothecary.
I think it's exactly in the rulebook. It just says they look nice, but that's all they are. But anyway, there's I always try and put like a joke or two somewhere if I can manage it. Anyway, so we'll pick the temple, which you can assign seekers to the temple to heal them more, because honestly the barracks will not heal your seekers to full in most cases. The workshop allows you to craft items, but we have no workers yet and no resources to craft those items, and recipes are unlocked by having the workers, so that's not a very good pick for the first time, except remember that you'll unlock skills if you pick that particular building. So if you have a seeker with a particular skill that you like, you can go with the workshop at the beginning. The Seeker's Den it makes scouting better. You add an extra card or more if you upgrade it. Basically, when you scout, you start off drawing 2 cards, and you get to choose which one you face. Some of them have very difficult effects, so it's always good to have options. And then later, you actually get more. Trying to remember now. You get more resource creatures. I was confusing it with the Creature's Den. The Creature's Den, when you upgrade it, you get more creature slots, and then you can also sell creatures for more. So we'll start with the Seeker's Den. So
there's actually like this economy that's going on behind the scenes too. You know.
Yes.
Okay, so you need coinage to afford certain items, and to get those items, you're selling off creatures as a whole, or like creature parts.
So when you capture a creature, you don't get any resources from them. You only get resources from them if you kill them, and you will be forced to kill many of them, because trying to capture creatures right when the fight starts it's just not going to work. And so there's a balance to be had. It's a risk versus reward. Can I try and get 2 creatures in one fight, or do I safely capture the one and finish off the other?
That's awesome.
The gold is only obtained from selling creatures, and gold is used for hiring workers, for buying and upgrading buildings. The resources are used for crafting, and there's some very powerful equipment that you can craft. It's not so much as like, weapons and armor. It's more like tools to use. Some of them help you with capturing. It just depends on the particular type of item, but I don't want people to think, oh, well, I'm going to get some good armor and then I'll survive. That's not really what the equipment in this particular mode is for. In the arena mode, definitely lots of weapons and armor in that mode. But anyway, so we've picked our 2 buildings, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hire workers. So that is this deck here, and I'm going to flip it over because we don't have...
these symbols do mean something.
Well, yes. On the back of cards, symbols always mean something.
Okay, very good.
All right, so, founder. Okay, so we need to pull the trader out. So the first thing you do when you are going through your deck is you need to pull out the workers that cost 2 gold. We might have ones that end up costing more of that with stretch goals, but the idea is that workers usually cost 1 gold. It'll say in the text if they cost more than that, and you can see this worker costs 2 gold to hire. So you take those out because you can't get any of the fancy workers to start. We'll give this a good shuffle, and then we're going to draw 2 worker cards.
Okay, I'm zoomed in on you here, so you can go ahead and describe those.
Okay, so we got the Alkalite, and the Alkalite is awesome, so we'll probably end up going with her. So she has, she's associated with the temple, which we bought, so that's convenient. she adds 1 extra healing to the temple. So every action the seekers spend there, they'll heal 1 additional health. And then she also has the potion of renewal crafting recipe, and that just shows the symbols show you what it takes to make it. It not really an early on thing, the potion of renewal, but the aid is definitely a good thing to have. The Ashgari trader. He allows you to capture creatures more easily, but it's the harder creatures. So he's a good guy to have a little bit later in the campaign.
Okay.
You may not, the first fight or first encounter, you may not even run into a threat 2 or 3 creature. Definitely not a threat 3 creature, but you may not even run into a threat 2. So he might not work out at all. Plus, you notice in the bottom right corner, there's the symbol. It's that same building symbol. He's associated with the creature pens. So even if we hired him, we can hire him without any problem, but we can't use his skill because we don't have his building. He's just hanging out.
Got it. So yeah, so for us to even utilize him, it's in the bottom left-hand corner of this card. You have to have that.
Yep. So
whereas
she
the
is
acolyte we have because of the blue swirly, awesome-looking building.
correct.
Got
So it's a clear choice here on which one we want. And then we just return the workers here. We shuffle them again, and they're ready for the next time we need. Oops, I just drew one. They're ready for the next time we want to hire them.
Great. And
So,
quick question. I know
absolutely.
that you might have mentioned this, but the plus next to the aid ability here, I've seen that plus sign here and also on the teamwork. What does that symbology mean?
So we'll go back to I guess let's go with Zack Sosa.
Okay.
So the symbols on the left of the skill tell you what type of skill it is. If it has the star, it's a special skill. There's 3 different types. We won't get into that here, but and the text explains you what type it is. But that cross symbol is a passive. So we kept the same skills for the workers, so most of them are passives. You can see that his battle cry, simple prayer, and admonish have an arrow. Those are actions. The actions, all the passives are, they're passive. They're always in effect. The actions you have to use.
And they don't exhaust or anything.
Yeah, you don't exhaust them at all. But the actions you have to, if they're in these unlockable skills, not only do you have to spend an action, which attacking is an action, so it's either he can use battle cry or attack. You also have to put them on cooldown, and so we're basically at the time where we'll do that. So let's have a look.
Cool.
So you can see these little lock icons.
I see them.
If we flip them over, that shows it's on cooldown. So we've unlocked the Seeker's Den and the Temple. So, for example, a simple prayer is level 1 Temple. So we put the unlock on here. Now, if Zack Sosa uses it in combat, we're going to flip it over, and then at the end of his next turn, we're going to flip it back. And so once we just got to make sure that we've unlocked all the appropriate skills. It should just be the level 1 ones. I don't think there's any that require 2 level 1s. Let's see.
And all these are level 1s. If you go to start at the top of the card and move down, it goes level by level.
Yeah. So, well, no. What it is. So you can see. I'm looking at Fani right now. Her heavy thrust ability. If we had the level 1 workshop, it's unlocked. We don't have it, so it's not. We have the level 1 Seeker's Den, however, so Daughter of the Wilds is unlocked. If we then purchase or upgrade the barracks next time we have a chance, we can unlock Resolute because we have the level 1 Seeker's Den, and then we'd have the level 2 barracks.
That's so cool.
So there's not an order. It's so do I.
It's. I think it may be used in other games, but this is the first one I've seen it in myself.
I always hesitate saying, oh yeah, we thought it up. It's totally unique. And so, what about this game? I'm like, well, crap, because there's a lot of games out there. So I don't want to say it's unique or anything. But it makes buying the buildings more about than just what the building does, and it's. You can end up upgrading a building you don't even necessarily want to use as much, just so that you can get some of these really powerful abilities. Because I'll tell you, the last ability on there is pretty strong for each character. I mean, For example, Zack Sosa allows him to revive an injured ally, so that's the equivalent of someone being dead in the game. And yeah, it's a battle res. At the end of the fight, if everyone or if they win the fight, everyone comes back. But trust me, when you're down a seeker, it you can tell, and being able to bring them back is a huge boon to the party.
Awesome.
But so you have to take 3 damage to yourself, though.
Oh yeah, I mean,
everything's got a penalty.
That's right. Well, I mean, everything has its price. Really, what it is. So we've set up our encampment. It's now time to scout. So we've got our scouting deck here.
Little map on the back. Good.
Yep.
Good.
Gonna shuffle.
So currently we get 2 cards to look at because we have level 1 on the little scouting thing, right?
We actually get 3 because you get to the default is 2 cards. At least I think that's the version we're playing.
And then level.
You got to understand the number of times.
No. Listen, I mean, I can actually. We talked a little bit about before we went on the air, but like, I feel the pain of like the number of play tests that you go through and revisions that you make and basically, and also the fact that you have 2 very, very different game modes that you're balancing on each side differently, which I will say one other thing I'll add. One thing that you did that I love is that the game modes are separate in terms of the way that they work and operate. Like you could have gone like the Blizzard route and like smashed PvP into a PvE game and then been like, oh, now I have to balance all of these abilities for PvP. And while I do that, it breaks everything in PvE. But wait, now I have to balance it again. And then you have to go into like cycles of like balancing stuff. And because you're keeping them separate, you don't have to worry about that nightmare. Yeah. And I respect that and appreciate that.
Yeah, I was very sad when they added the arenas and they just started balancing rogue skills against how they were useful in the arena. I for one liked sapping someone and letting them sit for 50 seconds.
Yeah, stun lock, man. I mean,
I know exactly what you're talking about. We actually each creature and that's in both. They're in both modes. We made separate cards for them. They definitely have comparable abilities, but they're balanced for the game mode that they're in on that particular card. Yeah,
that's great news.
Because we had to make some of them much more menacing for the hunt because we wanted people to die.
So back to this now. So Scout, without you unlocking the Scout hut, you get, but your base level is you get 2 cards to scout, correct?
Yes.
Now,
if that's the mode we're in,
if we add a level to the Scout hut, then every time we add a level, we add 1 more card to our Scout ability.
So all the information that you need is on the board here. So as you can see, when you upgrade it once, you don't get the Seeker's Den. You don't get an extra card. It's not until the 3rd level building level. The second upgrade upgrading to level 2 allows you to get 2 resources from tier 2 creatures, which helps a lot for crafting. It would have gotten a little ridiculous if we had 1, 2, 3, because then you're drawing 5 scout cards. It kind of diminishes the importance of the scout deck. And I mean, for all the testing we've done, we're hoping that backers are going to help us test more and tell us what they think, so that maybe we need to come up with something completely different for the Seeker's Den so that you only get 1 extra card. Every game could always use more testing. There's
right. And again, time out 1 more second. I'm also going to give you props for that you're open to feedback during the campaign and even throughout the period following the campaign, because I can't tell you the number of times where I've spoken with designers, pre-campaign, during campaign, and even following the campaign, where they're just like, nope, it's all done. Or they'll just like poo-poo your comments and stuff like that. Like, okay, the game's done. We don't care. You know what I mean? And let's not say they don't say it that way, but the air of it is, we've already designed this. It's what you see here is what you're going to get. And we're not going to change it. And I love the fact that you're open. And again, that's what grows communities, because these people that are now following you and backing you. And if you're like, hey, that's a really cool idea, and actually seriously think about implementing it and have conversations with people around that, I mean, that's how you do this. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to imply that our game is not done.
No. I shouldn't say that.
I know.
Yeah.
I not that you were implying that
Mhm.
either. But yeah, it's there's only so much that us and the folks that have tested the game can accomplish. Once
Mhm.
you open it up, that's when you really start to see things. You know, you start to see things, new strategies you never even thought of, and
Mhm.
are quite broken. You know, we've brought up the Blizzard games a lot. Blizzard it never even occurred to them that someone in Diablo 2 would decide they wanted to make a Hammerden and just use this like I think mid-level hammer ability, and then it became a whole spec because people discovered it was kind of broken.
Right.
So yeah, we don't know everything,
Right.
and we invite backers, even people who don't plan on backing, to let us know what they think, so that we can make sure it's the best possible game. Because the better game we produce and deliver, the better we are going to do on the next one, just in terms of people being happy with us.
Yeah, big thumbs up for me on that. That's something I really appreciate.
Yep.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean
to. No worries. It is all good. So anyway, so we're going to be drawing 3 cards from the scout deck.
Mhm.
So let's just flip these over. Already probably had to flip the screen. Apologies for that.
No, I'm right here. I'm following.
All right.
We're good.
My little icon stalker. All right. So.
All right. I just love that. Just imagining a grove of knives. That's kind of scary.
Yes, and it should be. So we have the Paleothron Mountains, the Grove of Knives, and Jekka's Tears. So there's 2 pieces of information on each scout card, and I just realized that we can't use these. Hold on. These were not set up correctly. Hold on. Let's see. So no.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice there's actually I lied. There's 3 pieces of information.
Okay.
These little bullets up here, those are very important. That's the threat level of the scouting card. So we were about to do some very dangerous encounters.
Awesome.
Makes sense
start off
considering
with
a grove of knives.
Yes. Well, there's a level 1 grove of knives too. It's more of like a grove of
Okay.
butter knives, but but you'll still probably die. It's okay. Let's see.
The grove of butter knives.
Love it.
All right. So we need to take all the level 1s here. So we're just going to make a very messy pile. Oh, come on.
Chris Cornell, do me a favor. Do you have chat up?
Yes.
Anybody who's watching, if you guys have any questions for Robert as we're going through this, feel free to throw those questions up in chat, and Chris will then relay them to Robert, since I apologize, but I don't have that up right now. So please, if you guys have questions for him that we haven't thought of, or anything you have questions about the game, what's his favorite color? Does he like ice cream with sprinkles? All that fun stuff.
There was a question posted earlier, but I felt it probably not the best one to relay. But
okay,
what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
Well, go ahead. You take that, Robert.
Well, you're already it's African or European, but
yeah, African or European.
Anyway, so we do not moving right along.
Yeah, moving right along.
We do not have the Grove of Knives. Sad face emoji, I guess. So Jekka's Tears, Wicked Gulch, and Gileath. So, like I said, the top little bullet here determines the threat. Once you get later in the campaign, you'll add the threat 2, and then you'll add the threat 3 once you're getting towards the end. The next piece of information is sort of a environmental effect. It affects the encounter. Some of them are specific to the creatures.
That's cool.
Others
they have like their little home locations where they gain power because they're in them.
Yep. And so if we look at Jekka's Tears, it says all creatures have +1 advance prior to attacking. So basically they all move 1 space forward whenever they plan on attacking. That one's kind of, it sounds more sinister than it is. That's probably one of the easier ones. Okay. This one says all seekers have -1 healing. Healing may not be less than 0. We're not going to pick this one, just FYI. And then this one says the Phoenix has on activation assign 1 damage to all seekers. We will also be avoiding this one. So
yeah, we're just not gonna go anywhere.
Well, this is why you need more scout cards, so you can avoid stuff like this. So the second piece of information we have here is there's always a named creature, and that basically that creature is sort of the superstar of the encounter. You have the River Guardian, Demon Wretch, and the Phoenix, and you'll see that there's a number next to them. In this case, it's all 2. That's the threat level. It's just like the scout cards. The greater the threat level, the more threat the creature is. And then you have 3 numbers after that. Now these are also all named creatures. There was some groans about the rule book. People thinking, oh, well, I have the named creature. Where are all these unnamed creatures you speak of? But basically, you're going to draw randomly for the remaining 3. It's not the most thematic, but it definitely makes things interesting. So we're going to go with, we'll go with, well, you know what? Screw it. Let's
YOLO.
Yeah, we're gonna YOLO. We're all gonna take 1 damage every time the Phoenix activates. That'll be fun.
Glorious.
So we'll go ahead and stick this card next to the down here where the space is.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna attempt to turn it because I'm just not that adept at Tabletopia. Thank you.
I got it.
All right. So the first thing, I'm gonna keep saying the word "so" a lot.
I got you, fam.
So we're gonna throw the tier 3 Phoenix over there, or the threat 3 Phoenix over there.
Okay.
We don't need threat 1. We're not going to need either. You have to understand that the game, there's only 1 miniature for each creature. So if we end up drawing duplicates, sometimes you'll have threat 1s mixed with threat 2s and 3s. You can't have a threat 1 Phoenix and a threat 2 Phoenix. We kind of designed it that way. It's not that you couldn't buy multiple copies of Wild Assent, and I wouldn't say that you totally should. You'll just need to place a token next to the miniature, and you're good to go. But for us, since we only have 1 token, pretend miniature.
Hey, Robert.
Yes.
Add-on miniatures.
See, we told people we weren't going to have add-ons, and if we did now, it would be kind of uncool.
It would be uncool.
I would, I'm going to have multiple copies. I don't know what your folks' problem is. All you got to do is hit that play button a couple more times.
But now you're taking that away from me, the ability to possibly have 3 or 4 Phoenixes on.
No, I'm not. Buy 3 copies of the game.
There you go.
Put some nickels next to them so you can tell them apart, and then you're set. But anyway, so we've got our tier 3
replacements later on.
Yes. So we've got our tier 2 Phoenix, and then what we need to do, and this is kind of our fault for setting Tabletopia up this way, is we're going to need to make the decks like so. So I put 2 there. Here we go. So we only need the threat 1s, but since we're
stacking the ones.
Yeah, we're making the decks. It's kind of well, one way or the other, we were going to have to move some cards, so I guess this is the way to go. All right. And so we're going to need to draw our 3 creatures from this threat 1 deck. And of course, the expansion adds more creatures, and the stretch goals add more creatures, and we've even added some special events with stretch goals, where you get to fight some of the ascents, etc.
Okay.
Let's see if I remember how to do this properly. Grab this and just jam it.
Yeah. There we go. There, you got it.
Yes.
Bottom has to turn orange.
Did a lot of testing with Tabletopia. I both love and hate it. All right.
Yes.
So we're not gonna have to worry about duplicates this time because we're only pulling threat 1, and we put the threat 1 Phoenix over here.
Gotcha.
So we're just gonna draw our 3 creatures, and now we just need to roll the 1 6-sided die. So what we did was for setups, we have the same map. We didn't want people to have this exact same setup every time, even if it was with different creatures. And so we, in the rule book, which you can't see here, and I'm going to have to flip to, we have specific encounter setups. There's 5 of them. If you roll a 6, you get to pick which one you want. Some of them are, if you ever played Final Fantasy, where they have like the, oh no, they're attacked from behind kind of stuff. We have ones like that. There's a little story intro on each one, just to kind of set the tone. But we'll roll the dice here and see which one we wound up with.
And you'll hashtag lore master us right now with the story.
Oh yes. Hold on. I need to click on.
So
No
Matt
pressure.
wants to know if a phoenix is a crispy chicken.
That's an interesting question. We based it more off of an eagle than a chicken. I will tell you that if based off of the scout card, I think our seekers are going to be extra crispy by the end.
Great, yay.
Okay, so since it's just real quick, I'll read it. So this one's called The Brawl. It says, after half a day of marching, your search for your quarry has reached something of a middle, the middle of your hunting party, in fact. You can see your fellow seekers on the opposite side of an impressive gathering of monsters. It looks like all parties involved came prepared for a fight today. You wouldn't have it any other way. So in this one, everyone's mixed together. The encounter setups also determine who attacks first, in this case, the creatures. And then we just have to set up everyone based off of the encounter setup, which you can't see. Okay, so let's take the Phoenix here. Let's take the...
So basically, you have a book. The rule book is in front of you, and you are taking all of the models and you're putting them up according to that encounter where it's telling you to place them.
Yep, they're numbered. So and it's the order we drew them. So I need to make sure I put these in. I drew them this way.
So I will just. I'm doing a top-down view of the board. You just place. You just build it as you need to build it.
Yep. One thing I forgot, which doesn't matter exactly when we do it, but you'll notice that we have numbers on both sides of the board. Forgot to put this right here. We have a better token than this. This was a placeholder. This is the season tracker. So the hunt takes place over 10 seasons. You got to think of it like this is very much like a roguelike game because you can die and death is permanent. And so the goal is to reach 10 seasons if you can. And so this just keeps track of that. And then we have the characters tokens here, and we have them split up on either side just so that the one side of the board doesn't get crowded. This is their health. So we can see Burline has 18 health. He's sitting on the 18. And so we need to do the same for the creatures. So the Phoenix has 15 health. So we throw him here. And then the Lava Fiend has 10. And we'll throw him over here. Or actually,
do you mind if I? So I'll put the Phoenix here. I'll put the other characters up here too next to the board. And we'll say that the Phoenix is the big baddie, aka the featured enemy of this location.
Well, he is the stronger of all of them.
And these are pretty much little minions that sort of are little creatures that heard us fighting the Phoenix and came to sniff it out.
So these the lore here is it are these wild creatures?
So the wilds is an interesting place. It's kind of alive by itself. And so although these creatures may actually fight each other under normal circumstances, the wilds reacts to threats. And so
so they make you they spray something on it makes you smell sweeter to the Lava Fiend, basically, and draws him into the fight.
No.
More
of like, I mean, that's a little too chemical than more chemical than we were planning, but I mean, sure. No, the idea is that while these creatures may not be friends, they're all part of the same ecosystem, and it's not a normal ecosystem. And so when a threat presents itself, like the Seekers, there's sort of a, I guess, unagreed truce. The magic of the wilds has a strange effect on the creatures, and in this case, it means that the Seekers are not going to be fighting creatures fighting themselves. They're going to be fighting I don't want to say cohesive unit because the way the AI doesn't make them necessarily cohesive, but at least they're on the same side for the moment. So let's see. Like I said, lots of so's. We're gonna put this over here just so I have all the tokens.
While you're doing that, my reasoning for asking the question was if they are wild creatures, a level 1 griffin, I would not expect to be wearing armor.
Well, that leads back to the griffin coming from the arena mode. But the griffins actually were once ridden by the elves. The elves had a kind of a problem a little while ago. They were almost completely wiped out. I always tell people, yeah, I added elves. It's kind of stereotypical, but I like elves, and I did murder kill like 90 to 95% of them before the story begins, so I don't feel too poorly. Let's see. So we've got the 1, 2. Make sure we have all the health trackers on here. 2, 4. Okay, so the health is all taken care of. Now we're just gonna place the creatures. So this one has the creatures on the outside. Let's see. Just making sure I do this right. All right. So we'll place the Seekers first because they are easy in this particular mode. Now the Seekers get to be placed however you like. They're numbered, but it doesn't matter. It's player's choice. So there is one like the Lost Seeker where the Seekers by themselves. You don't want to put like Ilithina or Burline who are very weak by themselves. You might throw Zack Sosa or Fani over there. In this one, they are all in the corners. So we're gonna. And they're all facing. Let's see if I can get this right here.
I got them. Are they facing out?
They're all facing inward on the map.
Okay.
So we'll just place them randomly here. There you go. Okay. So the Seekers are placed. Now we need to place the creatures. So the Phoenix, these off the board. Phoenix is going right here. And for everyone watching at home, just understand that Tabletopia is not as quick as actually playing a game. So if you're like, wow, that takes forever, keep in mind it is Tabletopia.
Yeah. Like reduce like almost 15 minutes or 20 minutes from like what you see here in terms of setup and stuff tonight. And also factoring in explanations and everything, you know, remove maybe an hour.
Yeah. They're like, wow, I watched that Wild Assent. It looked really great, but the setup was like 3 hours.
Right. And some of it is based on you know, conversations with you guys all too. And we want to slow it down enough so that everybody can follow as well. So that if you guys want to dive into Tabletop Simulator, you know, following watching the stream or following watching the VOD, jump on Tabletopia with your friends and play through based on what you watch here for the hunt. If you guys want to test it out.
Yep, it is available right now. Anyone can hop in. You don't need to pay for anything. Just do recommend that you use it on Steam. Steam is free, and you'll avoid any browser issues that might arise.
Right. Yeah, playing with browser, you might run into like memory. It's the most common one that people experience.
Yeah, it seems to be more common these days than it was in the past.
Yeah.
All right. Almost.
It's really strange. Even like I got that, and it doesn't matter the amount of memory you actually have on your system. It just for some reason does it.
It makes me think memory leak, but in the program, well, I mean, in the program, that's a very likely cause. But I am not that savvy with that sort of thing, so who knows? All right. So the last thing we need to place. Sorry, every time you see me, I'm thinking you can see me zoom in and out, but you can't. I'm like, oh man, that's terrible. But yeah, you can't see it.
No.
Anyway,
I'm your cameraman, man.
That's right. You won't make those rookie mistakes. So the last thing we need to do is place obstacles. So we haven't really gone over obstacles. There's 4 different types. This is the pit. Basically, you don't want to get thrown in the pit. This is blocking terrain. It acts exactly the way you would think it would. Basically, any line of sight that draws a line through blocking terrain, you do not have line of sight. We have the thorn brush, which is also blocking terrain, but if you are pushed into it, you take 1 damage. I believe bleed as well. Do we have bleed? Yes, it is. Also adds bleed. And then finally, this one with even though it's sharp, it doesn't damage anything. It's half cover. So half cover. It provides 1 additional defense if you're adjacent to it, and then also you can leap over it at the cost of 3 speed. Sorry, speed. We had action points at one point, so getting myself confused again. So anyway, we're going to put these off to the side. To keep things random, you also roll for these. So find my 1 6-sided die. And let's see.
So like if you only had 3 speed, it's basically you just move to the other side.
Correct.
Okay.
And in this, we'll go over movement in a second. But it costs 1 speed to rotate in Wild Assent,
Right.
and you can only attack the 3 fields in front of you, and then your range extends from that. But Zack Sosa, for example, if we take him and stick him here, he can only attack in this field, and this field, unless he rotates.
Yeah, so basic cone line of sight.
Yep.
Yep, got it.
All right, and I'm just writing down the numbers that I need to roll for these, so I don't have to. I can't really flip pages as easily.
Yeah. So what made you choose Square over Hex for the game?
It was the arena. I like hexagons. HeroScape is great. I have way too many copies of HeroScape, but it the issue with hexes is that we wanted to have a we wanted movement to be impactful, and we wanted to be able to have that sort of like back attack piece where being behind your opponent was advantageous. And there's some it's having the hex versus the squares, like 2 different schools of thought when you're designing abilities, and it just seemed like everything that we were doing was lending itself better to squares. So unfortunately, couldn't make it hexagons because
it keeps movement more simplified. It also keeps flanking / like completely behind mechanics a little bit more simplified. So
and there's we do have I don't want to say we have complicated movement mechanics, but we don't have this just straight 1 2 3 4 counting stuff all the time with the rotations, and so we didn't want to bog it down too much with how does that work. And then it ended up working out really well with the AI cards, because if you open up all those different movement options, it makes it a lot harder to figure out what the creature should be doing. Whereas if you just have the 4 cardinal directions, you're a lot better off.
Very true.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and roll the die here for our terrain 1 by 1 here. All right, so the 4 is the TC. Total cover. So we're going to go with this one, and it will be here. Roll again. 3, same one. Now if we roll this one again, we just roll again. So that's going to be here. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, there was just really no other option.
What I normally do in Tabletopia, this is just a note from what I've been doing. I just spam R. I think it's R, right, for rolling.
I gotcha.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I just spam it on top of it, and then I let it go randomly, and then I feel like I actually did a random thing. Other times when I played in Tabletopia dice rolls, I'm like, okay, was that really random, or did it just like flip the dice to one side, or did it keep the same way?
Well, I remember I had a friend who I was testing in Tabletopia, and he didn't realize there was a difference between roll, so he was just flipping the dice. It's kind of uncool of him, and I wasn't paying that close attention.
And then like halfway through, you're like, wait, you just rolled a 3, then a 4, then a 5, and then a 6, and then a 1.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. All right, so I believe this is the last one to place, and we can get into it.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. All right, so we've placed all our cover. We're going to throw the other cover pieces over here so they don't interfere with our aesthetic. And the only other thing we need to do is make the instinct deck. So the instinct cards are the AI cards for the creatures. Making the deck is very simple. All we have to do is, there's 5 per character, or creature rather, and we just take them all, we combine them together and shuffle. That does mean that sometimes you can have the same creature attack 5 times. That just means that creature is really pissed at you.
Got it.
And it can create some interesting mechanics. Thankfully, turns are alternating, so you can't just have like the creature attack a bunch of times in a row. You do get to activate your seekers in between each one. So let's move this here. Oops, grab double token here. Okay, so we're just going to flip this over and give it a good shuffle, and we'll trust that Tabletopia shuffles it properly. All right. Oh, the cat has awoken. Let's hope she doesn't wail. All right.
We're okay.
So we're going to draw our first card here. And it is for the Lava Fiend. So you'll notice there's a lot of confusing information on it if you've never looked at it before. So the first two lines you have to pay attention to immediately. The first one is targeting and the next is movement. And we have to understand with the instant cards is that it's going to tell you how who the creature is going to attack and what it's going to do before it attacks. Now, some of these don't have attacks. There's, I think the Phoenix has a healing ability, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, most of these are going to be attacks. So if we look at this, the first is a qualifier. It says enemy, so obviously it's going to attack the Seekers. It says the lowest magic defense, so it's going to look for anyone who has the lowest magic defense, and then it'll go for the nearest if it can't, if lowest magic defense doesn't limit it enough. So if we look at the Seekers, no one has, if I remember correctly, no one has, or no, I'm sorry, Fani. So Fani is the one it would go for if it can reach. If it can't reach Fani, it'll decide to go for the nearest target. So if we look,
if it can't reach Fani, it will go right to the nearest target. It won't look at magic defense down from there. So like it will, if it can't go for Fani, it won't go for like the number 1 magic defense.
No, it doesn't. We didn't want to have it like you sitting there just counting numbers over and over again.
Oh, okay, that's actually cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm trying to remember. We changed the targeting rules, and now I'm trying to remember if I remembered correctly about the going after what nearest meant. Actually, you know what? You know what's really great? At the end of the rule book, there's a thing where it tells you what each of these stupid words mean.
Yay!
Yay! And I didn't put nearest on there. Hooray! Okay. Anyway,
back to the drawing board.
Yes, like I said, we had 2 different versions, and now I just can't remember which one's which. Without me poring over the rule book, I'm pretty sure that this guy wants to attack Zack Sosa, because if you notice, he has Careful Advance 3. Or actually, hold on, I'm thinking he's not a ranged character. He's a ranged character. So if we look at the final section there, that's his attack. So his range is 3. So what we have to imagine is, all right, well, he has 3 movement. So he, if he wants to go after Fani, he'll rotate. We'll flip him here, and then he'll go 1 and 2. And the question is, does he have enough range to hit her? And the answer is no. So the range is 1, 2, 3, not there. So what he's going to do is he's going to actually hit Zack Sosa because he can hit Zack Sosa. And the Careful Advance, what that means is that he's going to get his just in range of his target and stop. So even though it's a 3, for example, he's not going to move at all because he's within 3 range of Zack Sosa, and he's just going to attack him. If there's some that have just advanced, that means they move as far or as close as they can to their target and attack. That's especially melee characters will have that. There's a couple other ones that'll pop up as well. Some of them might run away if they're pressed. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and initiate the attack here.
Just a quick question real quick.
Yes.
On movement. So if I were to take this Lava Fiend and move toward the what was it?
Fani.
I have to reduce 1 movement per facing that I turn, right? 1, 2.
No. We had that in one version, but it was too much like work. So
okay, so basically, if you want to move toward them, are you paying anything to turn your facing? 1?
Yes, you pay 1 to turn any direction, and keep in mind that it can also strafe. So if you wanted to move here, that's still 1, and you can move it that way. But yeah, we had it the 1 point per movement, and that's one of the reasons why hexagons didn't hang around.
Well, because your movement has to be really high for like effective
Yeah, and
combat.
it got ridiculous, and we realized, and that's what I was saying earlier about, you can start complicated, but be prepared to simplify, and that's exactly what we did.
So basically, if you want to change your facing in any direction, you just pay one movement and then move whatever you want to move, and it costs one for the change of facing, and then one per space moved.
Yep, and you may have to rotate more than once. It depends on the character.
Of
Although
course.
with the strafing, usually you can do that. It just depends on the character and where they're positioned, and where their target is.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to have the Lava Fiend attack Zack Sosa. So Zack Sosa
Mhm.
has 1 magic defense, so he's not really equipped to handle magic attacks. Now you'll notice that the range, the base damage, and the dice, they all have numbers, or 3 sets of numbers. That's the threat level. So a threat 3 Lava Fiend would have 4 range, 4 base damage, and 6 dice.
Got it.
This one's just a threat 1, so we're going to use the 3 base damage and 4 dice. So we're going to take the 4 attack dice, and we're just going to hit R, because why not? And so the blank does nothing. He has no specials. Actually, we should probably look at his card here. It's a defensive ability, so we're good. So the specials each count as 1 damage, and of course, so does the sword. So he has 3 damage on top of his 3 damage, which means the total damage of the attack is 6. And so Zack Sosa takes 5 damage because he only has 1 magic defense.
Got it.
So we're just going to drop him down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the Lava Fiend's turn. So move the Demon Wretch stuff over here.
And question, I may have missed this, and I apologize. So the range is 3. It's 3 damage and 4 dice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
you can see
even though they're not directly in front, he can kind of attack at an angle.
Well, remember, so like standard cone, so the 3 in front of him goes all the way down, and technically, would cone actually work out to the sides too, or is it 3 straight forward all the time?
You were 100% correct in the cone explanation. If we basically here take this and this, so he can attack all of these, assuming this wasn't blocking terrain, and then in the opposite direction, and then everything in between.
Yeah,
wow.
the base way to explain it, if you take draw an imaginary line from the 2 front corners of the space his facing is in, follow that line across, and anything within that path and in the center of that path will effectively hit.
So a range of 3 is actually a big area.
Yes,
it's a cone. It's cone. Like I said, imaginary line from the left and right of whatever facing he's facing.
So in mage terms, cone of cold.
Yeah,
yes.
pretty much.
It's exactly what the range is. And so I mean, range is very powerful in Wild Assent.
I see that.
Yeah. especially in the arena. But there's you can have a difficulty escaping a creature's wrath. We haven't even gotten into some of the fancier movement abilities,
especially with only a movement of 3.
Yeah. Well, remember, Zack Sosa isn't supposed to be running from stuff. He's supposed to be going towards stuff.
Exactly.
So, speaking of Zack Sosa, it is now we've done our 1 creature turn. That was determined by the creatures going first was determined by the counter setup. Now the Seekers get to go. It's not all the Seekers. It's just one of them. With this current group of Seekers, that one should almost always be Zack Sosa, because you want to position Zack Sosa so that he can use that teamwork ability to start adding on extra damage when everyone else attacks the same target.
Okay, now,
just to give you an overall idea of strategy, because it is very important in the hunt mode, because the creatures will punish you if you don't plan ahead. The Phoenix is going to hurt us a lot, but the Phoenix is worth the most if we capture it. And so we have to decide, do we want to risk taking 1 damage every time it activates? And there's 5 Phoenix cards in that deck. Or do we want to go after, kill the Phoenix first, and then go after, capture some of the smaller creatures? I'm of the opinion we should just, go full throttle through it and see if we live. But but in a real game, you might want to think about, what should we do with that Phoenix, because that Phoenix is going to hurt us thanks to the scout card.
Right. Now, a follow-up question. Could we kill off the Phoenix and then capture a lesser beast that's on the field? And
yes, all the creatures, we could try and capture them all. It's just we can't. So
Okay.
when it comes to capturing, it requires one seeker more than the creature's threat level to capture it. So
Got
all
it.
of the threat 1 creatures require 2 to capture, and the Phoenix, because it's threat 2, requires 3 seekers to capture it.
Okay.
When capturing is an action, just like attacking, if we had Zack Sosa here, he wanted to initiate a capture. He takes 1 damage automatically, and then he would place a capture token. I don't know where we put those here.
What does it look like?
It's this, the little green.
Cool, like a little hook thing.
Yep.
Oh,
so you can see that it has 2 different symbols. It's got the the hook for capturing, and then
Mhm.
it's got the ensnared talons there, and to show that
Love
it's
it.
been captured. So we'd put this on the creature automatically. Put it on his card, since this would be a miniature in the actual game. And then so Zaxos is done. He just hangs out there. If you want him to keep helping to capture, you cannot use him to do anything else. So when his turn is up again, you'll have him capture again, and then you'll flip it to this. Once the creature has this many tokens that it equal to how many seekers need to capture, then Zaxos will be able to attack again, because the creature will be captured. So now, while the creature is being captured, if you draw one of their cards, they don't activate. But the seeker capturing them takes damage, and then you draw another card.
Okay.
So it can get you can take a lot of damage fairly quickly.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of, it's back to that risk versus reward. Do you try and
Mhm.
capture early and maybe just remove something from the board? You risk having the other creatures attacking you while you're trying to capture. It doesn't cancel the capturing, but it's
Okay.
just adding on all that damage that you're taking.
So that's actually pretty interesting. So that is actually a viable strategy. You could you can rush the highest valued creature and the highest powered creature and try to capture it early game, but like you said, you might get pummeled by
Yes.
doing so.
Yep.
Okay.
And the it's all about risk versus reward. And sometimes, like, doing that in this particular encounter setup would be foolish, because there's no
Mhm.
way all the seekers are going to be able to make it to the Phoenix, for example. But if
Right.
you have a different setup where maybe the seekers got first attack, they're bunched together right next to whatever target they're hoping to get. It's a viable strategy. It all depends on what you're trying to pull off and what you think you can live doing.
Now,
And oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I'm reading some of these cards, and I think I have this accurate. If you wanted to capture the Phoenix, you have to leave one of the other creatures alive. Is that Was that accurate? Because on the bottom it says take flight. If the Phoenix is the only enemy remaining, it escapes.
Correct. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so the Phoenix has 2 things going for it. Basically 2 anti-capture things going for it. Like you said, take flight. It can't be the last creature. It just it escapes. It has rebirth, which means that once you drop its health to 0, it comes back. And you can't capture the Phoenix if it hasn't. If it still has that rebirth token showing that it hasn't died yet. And then, oh, by the way, to capture a creature, you can't just rush in at the beginning. Left out this little piece. The creature
Mhm.
has to be at half health or less to be capturable.
Oh,
Okay.
So the Phoenix, you have to do essentially what is that? My brain's
7-ish?
well, no,
no, you have to
7
kill
plus
him
15.
once, and then
Yeah, yeah, you have.
Oh, he has to be
he has to
he
be killed
starts with
once.
the rebirth. He starts with
Yes.
the rebirth token, so he has to be killed once in order to remove that token. Then you could, but then you have to reduce him half of that.
Yes.
So what is that, like
22.
20? What is it, 22 you said?
22. Yeah, or well, no, it'd be 23, because
Yeah, so he 23 total damage before you can even
yes. So
consider
the
capturing.
Phoenix is very difficult to capture. I think the Horn Golem, if I remember correctly, has some anti-capturing stuff. There's equipment that can help you capture faster. There's one that requires makes it so you don't have to have as many seekers, I believe, or it might be a worker. I'm trying to remember what we did with that. But so there's definitely the rush thing you're talking about. It's certainly possible, but you have to know exactly what you plan on doing right at the
Right.
beginning.
It's not like you just jump in there and just go, okay, I capture him. They
Yeah.
have to be weakened to
Yeah.
at least half health. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
So, like I said, Zack Sosa would make the most sense going in. So we're gonna his movement is 3. He only needs 2 to get here. He can attack the 3 fields in front of him. We could
Correct.
move him here if we wanted. Probably not a terrible idea because it'll
Because
protect.
adjacency would
Well,
help him on.
no, the blocking terrain doesn't help give him defense if that's what you're saying. But
Okay.
what it does is it makes him more difficult to hit because the line of sight issue. So Zaxos is going to attack the Lava Fiend. We'll take the capture token off there. Lava Fiend has 0 physical defense, so this is going to be fun for us.
Very good. And Zaxos starts with a base of 3 plus 3 damage dice, so this could be a nice big boom.
It could. Let's see. And it wasn't. So, but see, this is the we mentioned Kingdom early on. This is the difference. So I rolled 1 die. Kingdom Death, you missed. And like I said, I like it. It's hard. It makes every time you roll like a success like feel like a huge victory. But sometimes it's nice to know the dice aren't going to screw you. Zaxos still does 4 damage. So and because the Lava Fiend has no defense, he takes 4 damage. So we're gonna go. See it 10? Yep, that's right. It's the threat one.
I am looking at. You mentioned defensive ability on his card before. The son of Ikarit. Is that?
It's Akarat.
So normally, he doesn't normally have defense. Does this trigger every time defense would happen?
Yes. So this is the one icon we didn't go over. That little circle with the stuff reflecting off it. So that's a defensive ability. It's almost always used when it's not your turn. So this one, every time an adjacent attacker hits him, they take 1 damage. The real important word there is assign. Assign means that the damage is just put on. You just take the damage. There is no defense that you have to worry about. It's just you take damage. And so if you remember when we looked at the Gileath card, it says Phoenix has on activation assign 1 damage to all seekers.
Correct.
So they each take 1 damage. Their defense does not matter. So Zaxos is going to take 1 damage. So he's been hit a little bit during the course of this, and that's his turn. So
I also noticed real quick. Sorry, I just want to point out. So the Lava Fiend, if we crowded the Lava Fiend and there were like 3 seekers around him attacking him right now, on every one of those turns, all 3 of them would take an additional damage.
No.
No,
because they wouldn't be attackers.
Only attacker. Okay, only the active attacker.
Now, however, if Fani, for whatever reason, like I don't know, did a marathon over here to be next to him, and then Zaxos used his teamwork ability, he would take 1 damage because he would then be an attacker because he's attacking.
Got it. Okay. It's but the term active, the term on here, adjacent attackers, it doesn't mean that if they're potential attackers, it's the active attacker that
it would say adjacent enemy if they
okay, got it.
If it hit everyone.
Got it.
Well, I don't want to get too much more into the combat because it's getting late and
no, absolutely, yeah.
So why don't we skip ahead? We already went over capturing. We'll go over briefly the resources. So if you click on, let's just say, the Lava Fiend, you'll notice that next to its name it has a little resource. That's the blood resource.
Yes.
All of the creatures, if you kill them, that's what they award, and you'll accumulate those as you usually have to kill more creatures than you capture, and then those are used for those crafting recipes, like the one that the Alkalite comes with. If you manage to capture a creature, you'd bring it back with you to the encampment. The encampment currently, since we don't have the creature pens, only has the 1 slot, so you trade it in for whatever tier it is. So let's say we were miracle workers and we got the Phoenix, we'd put a tier 2 one here. The reason you do it at the end of the when the encampment phase starts is that there's actually I think it's a butcher, he can turn a captured creature into resources. Let's say if we manage to capture 2 of them, and they're like, oh crap, we don't have enough space for them. You can go ahead and butcher them, and because sometimes it's better just to capture a creature so that it doesn't kill you.
Right.
But that means that you won't miss out on those rewards. But that's all about if you've picked that particular worker. Once we're back at the encampment, we'll have the seekers hanging out over here. Each seeker has 5 actions they can use at the encampment. They're spending time at the temple is 1 action, and then it heals for the amount that, depending on what level the temple is. It starts off at 2. Ours would actually be 3 because we have this alkalite, so that's really nice. If you're, if Zack Sosa took everything on the chin, the amount of healing we got from the barracks and then the temple may not even be enough, but he might spend all 5 actions hanging out there. Other actions that you can do is you can travel to the Sylvestrum. That's the arenas where you can sell creatures. It's also where you can buy new buildings and then also hire workers. When you can only hire workers once, you draw, I think it's 2 cards. I think that's where we finished. And then you can either hire both, or none. We didn't want to have a situation where you could just keep pulling from the deck, and kind of takes that randomness out of it. I think for traveling to the Sylvestrum requires 2 seekers, and they have to spend 2 actions, so it eats up a healthy amount of the pool of actions. Scouting also requires 2 seekers and 2 actions, and if you don't scout by the end of the scouting ends the encampment phase, so you want to do it at the end. But if you choose not to, you won't have an encounter, but then your encampment's considered derelict. Seekers are bound by their oath to bring creatures back. If they are not, then they are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're going to run into problems. Not least of which is that the Wilds has probably had enough of their nonsense and will start causing more problems. If you do not scout for a second encampment phase, you're actually attacked by a greater threat level than your current season would normally allow. So the game forces you to play, or you'll die. But anyway, I think I've covered. You can craft equipment in the workshop if I didn't mention that. We're thinking about adding a hunting action, just as another way, something else for seekers to have to do, so that you can, and resources are kind of scarce, so it'll give folks a chance to have more resources. But that's pretty much it. Capture creatures or kill them, come back to the encampment, upgrade buildings, hire new workers, have better seekers who then go hunt again, and then eventually they start running into the higher tier creatures and the higher tier scout cards for even more nonsense thrown their way.
Got it. Wow. I mean,
there's a lot.
So, there is a lot, and this is, I was expecting depth when I looked at it and backed it, and it was there is like the base game, like the actual hunt and what's going on in the hunt is pretty basic. Like you move around. I like that you reduced the rules to something that's very, very palpable to pretty much any type of player, because you like, okay, you turn, you move, you have your range. The one thing that you mentioned is, so you're only allowed 1 action per seeker. Is that correct?
Correct.
In a round of combat. So I could either attack or use one of my special abilities if I have it unlocked, with the exception of teamwork, because that little plus means I can activate it as many times as I like to. It's a passive.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I clarified that for anybody that might be exploring this game, just so that you guys have a bit of a pretty good premiere on the rules, and then you just have to reference them if you watch what we did tonight. And then the rules are they're right in the game here. Are these updated? Are these the current rules, or should we point them to a different PDF that you have?
I think the latest version is on our website and on the Kickstarter page for the
Okay.
rules. I will say that not all the workers are in the Tabletopia version. I think we have 7 here, and it's either 20 or 30 that'll be in the core game. We've already designed them, we tested them. We just didn't get the illustrations all finished and where we wanted them, so we didn't. Everything else is polished, so we didn't want to throw them in there unpolished. And then, of course, our illustrator had to start working on stretch goals and everything else. Good problems
just to be clear, if I click the game rules button, these are not the current rules.
I'm sorry. You shouldn't be able to find the old versions of the rules. Everywhere you find the rules, they should be the version.
Okay. So
sorry,
if
I forgot Tabletopia had a link there. Sorry.
Right. I just wanted to make sure. But if I click that, if I'm following those as a guide, that'll take me where I want to be.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, it's a long stream because this is a pretty in-depth game, and I want to just say I appreciate your time with us today. I don't know. There's no pressure here, but you're free to join us later in the week too, on Wednesday and Thursday. If we're going to do a gameplay stream, don't have to answer that now. We can talk later. But I'm even more excited about playing this game, especially more so having it in my hands in the future. But for those of you who are still watching and did not get a chance, please type in !Raffle to get your name in for the giveaway. We are giving away the Champion Pledge, which is a $199 pledge level. And that will be basically whenever you do that, whenever you win at the end of the week, we'll announce the winner at the end of the week this week. We'll basically get your information and you'll become a pledge for that level in Kickstarter. Robert, anything else to add before we leave you this evening?
There's a typo on Ilithina's card. Those things.
He had to add that there's a typo on the card.
There's a typo on the card. Her second skill is supposed to be an active. I'm sorry. It will not make it into the version. I don't know. It's just the things you think about. You're like, oh man, I'm just waiting for someone to spell this word.
Wait. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yes.
You cut off for a second. That's why I was like,
wait. Sorry. I'm just waiting for someone to tell me, you misspelled this or whatever, because people just love like going in there and saying, oh, you did that wrong. Like people telling me that I misspelled assent. Like, no, I didn't.
That was early on. I saw it in the comments, and you were like, well.
So we talked about marketing advice. Let me tell you. Make your game name kind of like iffy on whether or not it's spelled correctly, because you'll get a lot of bumps in Facebook because people saying, "Hey, you misspelled this," and
right.
It's free advertising basically.
It is because every time they post on it, it goes to their page.
It goes to the top too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
1,000 comments.
Yep.
You spelled this wrong.
Yep. I at this point I just copy and paste the bit of lore I wrote about it on the website. But in the beginning I'm like, all right, no, didn't do it. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, and we can get more of that delicious lore from the website.
There's tons on the website.
The back of these cards, I believe, are going to have each individual seeker's story. Is that correct?
Also the creatures. All right. Wait, hold on. Is this? I'm trying to remember if it's the if they're on. No, it's the arena has the creatures.
Okay.
Because these have to be pulled random. But yeah, if you're curious, the arena mode is also on Tabletopia. If you like skirmish games, if you like the combat in this game, it's a lot of fun. Customizing your ascents before you make your troop of creatures. It's very entertaining, and there's a lot of strategies you can employ. There's some wacky abilities that have interesting interactions. I'm really excited about the one add-on we have sitting there with Lady Aylwyn. She has 2 skills that involve movement, and you basically, if you pick both of them, she can just put people wherever she wants on the board. There's a lot of fun to be had in the. Check it out.
Awesome. So we're going to do really quick final thoughts. Chris, you were in here. You got to experience, Robert's telling of how to play and some of the lore. Give us some thoughts.
I want to play it. Like it's I kind of tend to shy away from some of these really, really complex games until someone that knows it tells me how to play it. Because like when you're reading the rules, it's always so complicated and you get lost. And then when you're trying to teach other people, this actually makes sense to me. In a lot of weird ways. I mean, there's some unique stuff here that I like that I've not played in other games. At first, when I started looking at it, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to play this because it's like scary, complex. But now it's like, yeah, I want to dive in. I want to play it, and you know, it looks like a lot of fun. I love the movement mechanics. This would not be a wife-approved game, but she doesn't have to know. So
You
yeah,
did what?
exactly. But
Yeah.
I do have a question though, and maybe this is posted somewhere. Is this just the hunt, or is this got arena with it too? So if I were to go spend the money and back it, would I get both aspects of it, or
So
just the one?
So for $100, you get everything that you see here, plus the miniatures that go along with it, and then the entire arena mode packaged in one box. The expansion is another $100, and it adds a ton of new content. It adds a new type of creature for the arena mode called mercenaries, which are basically people. So normally you just have your Ascent and your Pokemon-esque creatures. This adds actual traditional gladiators, which is something I really wanted to be able to fit in, and it kept getting pulled out. But yeah, so actual traditional gladiators. It adds boss fights, so you can do co-op arena mode stuff. But yeah, to answer your question, 100%, you get the entire arena mode and the entire hunt mode, full, complete separate games jammed into one box for the
Nice.
low price of $100 or $99. I'm sorry, it's 99.
Now, I do have another comment on this. Like, it looks like based on, whether you play the same little section over and over and over again, it doesn't matter. It's got like tons of different replayability. Like everything's going to be different every time.
Mm-hmm. And everything was balanced with these 4 seekers, so we're gonna have a lot of fun balancing it for the new. But yeah, I mean I'm not sure how we're gonna fall on that. It depends on how many healers we decide to have. But if you take Burline and another healer, then it's kind of diminishes the importance of some things. So either we're gonna have to solve that with classes, or we're not gonna solve it and say, look, if you want to have an easier time, if you want to play with your kids and not die, have a chance of dying every fight, then just take 2 healers and you'll be okay. But yeah,
That's
it's
not a bad idea.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like I'm really excited to play this. Like I said, full disclosure, I am a backer for this. I was excited before. I'm even more excited now. Everybody, please go out and check out the Kickstarter if it's something you're interested in. And for me, final thoughts. When I first saw this, the one thing that triggered in my head was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the game Gladius. It was on Xbox years ago. It was also on PlayStation, I think, too. A lot of the combat stuff. My wife and I, when we were dating, a while ago, that was one of the games that we played all the time together. And this is something I talked to her about, and I showed her, and she's like, wait, this is like Gladius? And I was like, yep. She's like, okay, buy that now. But basically, it's a basic game of like skirmishing, but it was made by LucasArts, and it had the gladiator theme, and there's just a lot of things that are reminiscent of it and remind me of it. And to put that to a board game, and also the fact that you're able to level up your character and build all these cool things, and the encampment is such a cool idea, and the fact that different buildings will unlock abilities as you level them up for your seekers, which is even cooler. So, but yeah. So again, check it out. Take a look at it. I'm not going to tell you guys to buy it. Totally go buy it. But just take a look. It's definitely something that's great on Kickstarter. And to be honest, a really tough time to be on Kickstarter with all the other things that hit. I know Cloudspire had a huge following prior to Kickstarter, and that title game by Druid City also massive following before the Kickstarter. So again, kudos to you, Robert, for your prep work on Kickstarter, because to go to launch concurrently with those 2 projects and still get your funding is like high five to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of campaigns in October.
Yeah.
And there's still more to come. I will not name them because competition. Although I did already
Sure.
name one of them. But but yeah, it was probably our biggest concern leading up to the campaign was just the sheer number of competing projects.
Yeah.
But we did
All right.
okay, and we're still doing okay.
Yes, you are, and you will do fine. And best of luck for the rest of the campaign, and also for the future of Lazy Squire. I think you guys have a very bright future, and can't wait to see what else you guys come up with in the future as well. But at this point, oh, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead,
Robert. I don't know if you covered it earlier. Will we get a chance to see you at PAX Unplugged?
No, I have no.
It's such a short drive.
He has no conventions on the horizon.
Where's PAX Unplugged?
It's in
Philadelphia. I am driving to Pennsylvania in November. I don't know when PAX Unplugged is.
It's the end of November, right after Thanksgiving, man.
See, I'm going before. My friend who used to live here in Virginia, he moved to Canada. We stay in a really terrible hotel in some random place in Pennsylvania, and we play board games. So
there you go.
he has not played Wild Assent yet.
If you end up in Scranton or around Scranton, because that's a pretty horrible place in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I lived right around there.
It's Clearfield is
okay. No, that's
where we're going. I'm not going to, now that I've given a definitive location, I will certainly not give a date. But
right.
But yeah, so that's the closest
Awesome.
I'll be to PAX Unplugged, I guess.
Awesome.
Well, if you get a chance, come visit us. We'll all, like a lot of us will be there, so would love to see you. Even if you're not in there to promote your game, come play some games with us.
Very true. And the last thing I'll say, one more time, Raffle in chat, ! Raffle in chat for a chance to win this a backing of this game, and you'll have a chance to win again Wednesday. I'll be streaming on my channel, Happy Fun Time Live. We'll actually be doing live gameplay, and then Thursday, come back here to Geek Spiel. A few of the guys here are going to be doing live gameplay of this game as well. We might mix it up. I might actually take a stab at Arena, and they might take a stab at the Hunt. We're still in talks about that. I personally really want to try the Hunt though, so maybe you guys will be stuck doing Arena. I don't know. We'll see. But again, Robert, big thank you to you. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful night, everybody who's watching. We will catch you Wednesday at Happy Fun Time Live. Chris, thanks for joining us again tonight.
Yeah.
And everybody have a wonderful night. Peace out. See you later.